Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
One of the bigger NFL stories I didn't get to talk about yesterday that somewhat affects the Cleveland Browns, but really just the AFC North in general, and I think it's something Browns fans would be interested, is this story coming out of Cincinnati. And the story coming out of Cincinnati is that Joe Burrow has turf toe, and this is an injury that will keep him out for at least 3 months. Now, the way that this news trickled out, I think it's the most concerning thing about this for Joe Burrow at the very least, because at first we heard it's turf toe, and they told us when it was turf toe that it was grade 3 turf toe, and that it's worse than you think, and that there's a possibility that he could be out 12 weeks. That was the first thing we heard. Then, the Bengals and Joe Burrow comes back and they say, hey, we are going to get a second opinion. It's not over. Hopefully we get a second opinion and the swelling goes down. We get a better look at this toe, hear better news. Well, then yesterday they get that second opinion and the doctor must have told him it was worse than what they thought, because Joe Burrow went from maybe missing 12 weeks to he's missing a minimum of 12 weeks is what the report is, right? I don't remember the last time I heard an injury announced in that fashion. Like usually you get a time range. Oh, it could be 3 months. Oh, it could be 4 months. Oh, it could be 6 to 8 months. I've never heard an injury announced in such a way where they're saying at minimum 12 weeks, right? 3 months he's going to miss. Now, if you're a Cleveland fan, if you're a Cavs fan, this injury is familiar, right? Because Darius Garland dealt with turf toe and tried to play through turf toe in the playoffs and ended up needing surgery and possibly might miss the beginning of the season because of that turf toe surgery that he went through. So we know that this is a serious injury, that it's much more serious than I think people understand it to be. I mean, I heard Ben Kirk, take his word for whatever you want, take it, suggest that Joe Burrow might never be the same again after this injury. And it is strange that this is the second time Joe Burrow has seemingly had his season ended by a very obscure injury that people swear he might not be the same from again. But this has happened twice with Joe. And I think it's happened enough with Joe Burrow to where people are asking this question. Is Joe Burrow this generation's Andrew Luck? We're going to talk about that question and more, but before we get into that, I want to thank my sponsor for today, Sleeper. Hey, have you ever heard of the Sleeper app? Well, here's a fun secret. It's not just for fantasy leagues. It's great for fantasy leagues. I personally have used it for years with my college friends to play fantasy football and to do pick'em leagues, all sorts of fun stuff like that. But the Sleeper app also gives you news. It gives you scores. You can also try to turn your football knowledge into real money. Just download the Sleeper app and pick more or less on your favorite players with more stats than any other daily fantasy app. Just choose 2 or more of your favorite players from pregame or live. Pick more or less from the predicted stats, and you could win up to 100 times your money if your picks win. Use promo code WORSTTAKE, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Again, promo code WORSTTAKE. You'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. Links are in the description. That is the question a lot of people are asking, because whenever there's a quarterback who is undoubtedly really good at football, who feels like their career might either be stifled or shortened because of organizational incompetence, the name Andrew Luck comes up. Hell, I'm convinced that the day the Cleveland Browns hit on a quarterback, let's say they get Francisco Mendoza in the draft and he ends up being Andrew Luck or ends up being like really, really good early on, people are going to worry that it's an Andrew Luck situation all the time. Like this is what happens when you aren't a franchise that has a sterling reputation, that gets a franchise quarterback, but you aren't having that reputationally changing level of success. And that's what's happened with Cincinnati. It also does not help Cincinnati that this is not the first time that people have seen something like this go down with Cincinnati, right? The Bengals had Carson Palmer. They had a similar situation with him where people don't think that the best of Carson Palmer was unlocked until well after his time with the Bengals. This is something that has been kind of held over the career and everything of Joe Burrow since he has been on the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, my question is, are the Bengals the reason Joe Burrow gets injured? Right? Like, I think that's the first question I go to whenever asking, like, oh, is this guy going to be the new Andrew Luck or whatever, right? Are the Bengals the main reason that he's getting injured? I'm not 100% convinced that that's the case. And I know that might be a hot take, right? I think everybody has said to themselves, the Bengals, their offensive line stinks. Look at the sack numbers. And Joe Burrow's being punished by this bad offensive line put together by this cheap franchise. While I think it is valid to call the Bengals a cheap franchise and criticize some of the way they move when it comes to business, I think they've earned a lot of criticism there, no doubt in my mind. I don't know if the amount of hits Joe Burrow takes are really on the Bengals as much as it is a part of Joe Burrow's playing style. It's interesting, right? Some quarterbacks, we understand that their play style is inherently dangerous, right? You won't hear somebody shut up about the dangers of Jaden McDaniels' playing style or Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson or back in the day, Cam Newton, right? You won't hear people shut up about how dangerous those styles of quarterback plays are because we know that there are inherent risks with that style of quarterback play. But the other style of quarterback play that I don't feel like people focus on enough when it comes to this sort of thing is the exact type of quarterback play that Joe Burrow loves to do, which is this playmaker heavy style of football where you're going to hold the ball and maybe try to extend plays after the fact and roll around a lot and do that kind of thing, right? If we look at Joe Burrow throughout this year, he has taken how many sacks this year? 5 already. He's taken 5 sacks. 5 would put him, oh my God, who's taken 11 sacks so far? Cam Ward's taken 11 sacks so far. And in Cam Ward, I mean, to my point, it makes sense, right? Cam Ward is exactly what I talk about, a play style that people don't bring up as inherently dangerous, but when you see it, you understand that this is not a play style that can last very long, which is the same thing that we saw with Deshaun Watson, where he has a play style that encourages and makes the life easier for guys rushing the passer, right? Joe Burrow has been sacked 5 times, despite only being pressured 13 times this season. That's a crazy number. He has been pressured the 4th least of all quarterbacks in the NFL right now, right? And really the 2nd least, because 2 of the quarterbacks that have been pressured less than him are Jake Browning, who's only played 1 game, and Mac Jones, who's only played 1 game. So Bo Nix is the only quarterback who has been pressured less than him. Yet he has been sacked the 11th most times in the NFL, 5 times. That tells me that Joe Burrow is part of the reason why Joe Burrow gets sacked. Now, to be fair to Joe Burrow, last week he did play Myles Garrett in week 1, right? So it's not like he had a normal week 1. I'll give him that, right? But this has been consistent with Joe Burrow's career. And it's interesting because of the reputation that the Bengals have, because of the lack of trust that people have in the Cincinnati Bengals. People just kind of assume that all this wear and tear that Joe Burrow has been taking has been against his will, right? Like he doesn't play a style that would open him up to this. But the absolute reality to this situation is that Joe Burrow is as big of a part of a reason he takes as many hits as his offensive line is. And yeah, there were parts, especially early in Joe's career, where he had pretty bad offensive lines. I don't know if that's been the case over the last couple of years. They spent some money, right? They got money. They spent money at right tackle. They spent money at left tackle. They've got brought in a center, right? Like the Bengals have not been cheap on the offensive line when it comes to protecting Joe Burrow, and they have not been cheap at wide receiver. They kept T. Higgins. They brought in Jamar Chase. Joe Burrow takes these sacks because Joe Burrow is bad at avoiding sacks. And Joe Burrow takes all these extra hits because, like, the sacks are one thing, right? It's the extra hits that get that wear and tear for Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow takes those extra hits because that's how Joe Burrow likes to play football. So I don't know if he's the next Andrew Luck because Andrew Luck was a little bit more of a victim of the Colts not investing than Joe Burrow was, even though Andrew Luck certainly played in a way that also invited contact, right? But it wasn't in the same way that Joe Burrow does. I think more conversation needs to be had without the assumption, leaving out the assumption that the Bengals are responsible for every injury that Joe Burrow takes. I think we need to have the conversation about how Joe Burrow plays quarterback. And does that add to why he seems to get these weird injuries over time? Because I think his play style is actually more dangerous than how Lamar Jackson plays, more dangerous than how Josh Allen plays, right? More dangerous than even how like Jalen Hurts plays. Like Jalen Hurts' body can hold up to that. Joe Burrow's body keeps breaking down. And I think not enough conversation is had about that part of it. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents in there, right? This Joe Burrow injury news is fascinating. What that's going to do to the Bengals season, that's fascinating. And what's going to happen with the NFL landscape now. I mean, like the AFC feels wide open right now. Doesn't seem like anybody's leading that race, right? The 2 teams that feel like they're the best in football in the AFC are right now Baltimore and maybe Buffalo. But both those teams haven't gotten over the hump. So, like, is this like a situation where they're going to have to, one of those teams are going to have to get over the hump? It's interesting to see. But this Joe Burrow turf toe injury kind of makes me think about how Joe Burrow plays football and how we talk about it. I don't think does it enough justice on what's actually the problem there with why he takes so many hits. And, you can see it. The quarterbacks who get hit the most, the quarterbacks who get more exposed to injury are the quarterbacks who hold on to the football. Not the ones who run a ton, but the ones who hold on to the football. I think we have spent too much time fear-mongering, well, not fear-mongering, but, worrying about injury to quarterbacks who run, and we haven't really thought about how much holding the ball behind the line of scrimmage and maneuvering around behind the line of scrimmage opens you up to damage as a quarterback, right? I mean, we're seeing Cam Ward live that life right now. He's taken 11 sacks in 2 weeks. That's a crazy number. That's an insane number, right? Like, that's something to certainly think about when we talk about this Joe Burrow thing. But y'all let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Everybody have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.